rest of this. And last but not least, Miguel.
Thank you, Katherine. I'd like also to start to congratulate you as chair of the Commission on Climate Change on creating such a unique document that you've made, and we're sure in Velux that it will lead the way for the future. It's an excellent work. We were particularly happy to see that the Commission has kept a very clear focus on reducing CO2 emissions and not reducing necessarily energy as your primary target, and also for your strong commitment to transition to renewable energy. No offense to wind and biomass, I was a little bit surprised to see how small focus there was on solar energy as the biggest energy source potential that we have. The sun provides 23,000 terawatt years per year, and we only need 16 to run this planet. So maybe we should look into how we can exploit that a little bit more. I'm sure that the Commission's work is a big step in the right direction. But to quote one of our former factory managers in a bad translation, you have to remember that it's not the thought that makes the change; it's the action, and that's what we need to do. You asked, what will we do then? Well, doing business at the thin end of the grid, we face different challenges than most of my co-panelists here, because consumers don't necessarily act neither on financial nor on climate logic. Even though I think the building industry can help in a lot of ways. In a Danish perspective, we could reduce the Danish CO2 emissions by 4 million tons, or 10%, with existing products and technologies, and position Denmark and the Danish solution providers and construction business in front in the green economy when we talk about energy renovations. The challenge is pretty clear. 40% of the energy consumption in Western Europe comes from buildings, and we need to address that if we want to make a solution. We have 2.3 million homes that are older than 1980, and they all need to be climate renovated, and there's a huge potential. The stick probably won't do it alone. Smoking and diets prove that it's not enough to say that it's unhealthy or dangerous to you. You need something else. You need a carrot as well. You need an attractive alternative, and we need that. We need to develop the solutions for energy effective buildings that are also attractive and healthy. Healthy because we spend more than 90% of our time indoors as we do now, and already today 30% of the buildings we are occupied in have inadequate or unhealthy indoor climates to some extent. And the Danish Institute on Public Health has prognosed that by 2020 we will have 1.7 million Danes with allergies, among others due to poor indoor climate, and it's the double of what we had in 2005, and that tendency goes for all of Europe, so we need to do something about it. The solutions might not be that hard. We need to create sustainable living in buildings. It takes effective energy designs and no CO2 emissions by using a new energy design, combined also with the attractive and healthy buildings and the use of renewable energies in a holistic approach. That holistic approach, which is also increasingly referred to as the active house principles. Between us we have the products, we have the technologies. From Velux we could save up to 33% of the energy required for cooling buildings in Southern Europe. Across Europe, better use of daylight could save us 15 million tons of CO2 per year. And thermal solar energy in simply half the homes in Europe could save us another 40 million tons. That is, if we can strike the consumer motivation and preferences as well. For that, of course, we will do a lot from the commercial side, but we also need support from the framework that we set up. We need the right legislation. We need to distinguish, as the climate report also indicates, distinction between carbon reduction and energy saving. We need a focus on energy balance so that we take into account also the passive heating, for instance, getting into buildings and the daylighting provided in buildings. And we need to quantify indoor climate, to quantify daylight and fresh air requirements to ensure that we have the right indoor comfort. Then we need consumer guidance. We already have energy labeling on buildings. Maybe we should move on and look for carbon or CO2 labeling of buildings, and probably, or maybe even look for property taxes that are tied to these CO2 emissions from the buildings, and some of the other very interesting proposals which has come up in the Commission for Climate Change report that we've just received. But it also takes incentive packages. We need some long-term effects in design and effect of the incentives. We need climate loans and ESCOs, and the homeowners have to be able to see both environmental, financial, and emotional advantages. And if you want to take a look at the buildings that we will have in 2050, you just need to look around you. Half the buildings we will have in 2050 already exist, and they are from before 1975. So we need to do some extensive climate renovations, and they will deliver a steady return for many years to come. It's certainly a good business both for the homeowner, but it will also boost our green tech exports and create jobs in construction for our society. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mikael. You have certainly highlighted two of the major challenges that I think we might be able to address here. One being what kind of decisions can we make today that we won't regret in the future when we don't really know what technologies are going to be cost effective in the future. So what are the no regret decisions we can make today? And of course the other major challenge is that nobody has told consumers yet that they're supposed to behave like economic models, and that makes this rather difficult.